All right, everybody. So, as you asked, the thing we're talking about is the subject of mental prayer. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to basically have like an introduction of like prayer in general, world religions, that kind of like does a segment of like what do it's like, like they always have that little terrible commercial like what's this is your brain on drugs, like this is going to be like this is your brain on other religions. And so that's kind of the lead up to why Catholic prayer is different and distinct from other forms of meditation in other religions. This stuff is just like I think one of the most important things about prayer is that it's about being open and honest with God and undefended before God. The problem is that I'm very good at defending myself in really weird ways. Like, see, I should be a football jack. That'd be a lot easier. Instead, I'm like defend myself by trying to make giant diagrams and like trying to have expertise in areas that I don't use. So we'll hopefully put some of the weird ways that I try to defend my identity and compensate for all of my shame to use, and you will actually benefit from these, hopefully. So what we're going to do is we are going to look at basically what does like each kind of religion do to the mind. And the basic thing that we're going to do here is how many people have seen Star Wars? Has everybody seen Star Wars?
Yes.
Has everybody seen Star Trek?
Yes.
Maybe once.
Yeah.
All right. Everybody seen Lord of the Rings?
Yes.
Okay. No? Okay.
No, I have not.
Okay, well, we have to fix that. Movie night for Exodus 90. No, I'm just kidding.
I have not.
The premise is, it's very simple. Like, so for example, like little Yoda, you probably recognize the character of Yoda, even if you haven't seen Star Wars. Like, he's like a little Zen master little creature. That's not what people are meant to be. People are not meant to be zoned out, like, I am one with the universe, I'm not disturbed by anything. We're not meant to be like that. But if we do Eastern meditation forms, we end up very serene in a weird way. We turn off aspects of our humanity, we don't integrate our emotions, we disconnect things, we unplug stuff, and we may be healed from the normal human sufferings, but we end up being put together kind of like a car. It's like you bring it to the shop, they're like, it's not making noise anymore. What happened? I took out the engine. Well, not making noise, it's going to break down a little bit down the road. But so the thing is, that's what a lot of these other religions will do. They'll remove the problem that you're having, but they will lead to a distorted humanity in its place. So like you'll be trained improperly with the feelings and all that. So you don't want to be like Yoda, who's like zoned out, speaks backwards, no, I'm just kidding. Small and green, you don't want to be that. You don't want to be like Spock from Star Trek either, who's very rational. He's very like it is not logical to get disturbed about this. Like, that's not how people are. Like, people are meant to have feelings. You want to be like in Lord of the Rings, the wise figure is Gandalf, who has the full spectrum of human emotions. He's able to enjoy life. He's having fun with the little hobbits. He's yelling at people, calling his friends stupid. Then he's like consoling people. Then he's like rebuking evil. And then he is all over the spectrum. Almost in a way like Christ is. Christ is kind of all over the spectrum. He's like, you're horrible, like you Pharisees. He's like condemning them, and then he's like, bring the little children, and it's like everything's going on because he's fully human. And so Christ calls us to a full human life, and that there are ways of using the mind in every religion that bring you to a certain form of human life. And the basic thing that we're going to look at is kind of what this does. So the basic premise is that Christianity is leading people to a fully integrated human life. And two things are happening. You're going to have the integration of the personality, and also a unity with God. So basically the thing is, normally I don't have, normally my thoughts and my feelings are not naturally integrated. My passions are not naturally integrated with my intellect. Like, my passions are like, I want to do this and that, and I'm going to beat that person up. It's like that's what it does. It's not natural. So the thing is, what happens if I spend my time praying, then I'm like, okay, I feel like I want to beat this guy up, but I told God about it. So now it's part of me, but it's not dominating me. And so that's what prayer is doing. It's taking my passions, putting them into my real personality so that I can actually live as a human, so that my passions are part of me. I'm grossly simplifying that. It's like there was a religious order that I liked, and they said, like, you will, like, please, their charism talk about moderating and integrating the passions. Like, it's like, well, how do I do that? Like, well, St. Padre Pio talks about, he says mental prayer or prayer, he talks about how it leads to the ordering of the conscience and the moderating of the impulses. And psychologically, you could talk like, Freud talked about the id, that's like your impulses, the superego, your judgments of yourself, you're always beating yourself up or something. Prayer allows us to get those things into where they belong. It allows us to, so like if I spend time in prayer, that means I look at what's my conscience doing. Is it beating me up over something stupid? Or is it like, or should I be looking at something more? Or my passions, maybe I'm not standing up for something I should be, or maybe I'm raging off in the corner on my roids, whatever it is. It's like you said, roids, right?
Yeah.
That's what it's So basically what this is doing is it's leading to the integrity of the person in themselves and their unity with God all at the same time. That's ideally what a religion should do. We're going to see that the only way you can do that is really as a Catholic. So basically what we're going to do here is we're going to take a little bit of a tour of this diagram. Like, this is a version of a diagram that like I was trying to figure out how things fit together. This came out of my conversion experience because I had to figure things out. But this is a version of that. It's not exactly that diagram, but it summarizes what my brain reorganized to some degree. So basically the whole thing is right in the middle you have Christianity. I'm just calling it that for now. I'm not going into any detail of the spectrum of denominations in it. But basically what you have is when you have Christianity, you have the place where this is really going on properly. Basically what you get is there's also a second tier, you could call it. Let me see, make sure I divide it correctly. When I circle it, that piece of paper. Yeah, okay, the second tier you're going to have really, and if you think about this, you'll recognize what goes in the second tier, because the second tier is Islam and Judaism. That's the closest you're going to get outside of the Christian spectrum to one God. They're very different in origin, different in aspects, but they're very similar in that they are closest. They're monotheistic religions, they're closest there. Then you're going to get the third tier over here. And that's going to include things that you might not think of as religions to begin with. But one of the most important religions that every Roman Catholic should know about is Stoicism, which is traditionally called the philosophy, but there's no difference in the ancient world between a philosophy and a religion. And this is as important to the West as Buddhism is to the East, and nobody thinks about it. But there is a revival of Stoicism right now. There are neo-Stoics. It's a big revival because people are looking for answers. The difference between, it's basically about being rational. This really is like being like Spock. So it's like Stoicism would be like, and there are books you can read. There's like, I like Stoicism. It's kind of like the idea, like if something happens, like you prepare yourself ahead of time. You say like, okay, I'm gonna go, there's gonna be a traffic jam. The way the world is that there are traffic jams, and if I get upset about traffic jams, that means I'm not agreeing with the way the world is. And if I don't agree with the way the world is, then I become disturbed and my passions arise. And I say, this car should move, and the car shouldn't move because that's the way the world is that there are traffic jams in the world. And they talk about this as, we call Christ is the logos. Stoicism used this term logos, meaning that there is an order to the universe. There's a rational order to all things. And if I bring my reason, if I talk to myself rationally, I will become in harmony with the order of the universe, and that makes me godlike in a way. It doesn't make you God, but it makes you godlike. It makes you akin to the gods in their view. So that's
what
kind
was
of
that called for?
That's Stoicism.
Stoicism.
And so people like the Emperor Marcus Aurelius, he was a Stoic. There are a lot of very so that's just a side note there. But you'll see also things like Zoroastrianism, Confucianism, and Islam. See, Confucianism is very much like
Confucius.
yes, literally the little quotes. But you'll realize Confucianism is very similar to the type of wisdom you get even in the West. So like there's things like where when the Jesuits went to Asia, they said, "Oh, look, Confucianism looks like Stoicism. We'll talk to them about like philosophy." Like they gave them books. They're like, "Oh, we have Western books." They're trying to talk to them, to kind of reel them in a little bit. But Confucianism is very much a religion of a lot of funky ways to talk about it, but it's a religion of like social benevolence. We talked about ancestors today. It's about a lot of like honor your ancestors. It's as a purpose of ritual. There's a sense of order. It's a little bit more like the order of the heavens, more than rational order. So there's a sense of like there should be a family. There's family relationships. There's these different type of things. But it's definitely there. Zoroastrianism is kind of is akin to a lot of is akin to this stuff here, like Judaism and Islam, in that it has one God, but there's also evil is an ultimate presence also. So it's not like in Christianity, God and the devil are not on an equal playing field. Like Zoroastrianism is like God and the devil, like what they would call God and the devil are like equal and opposite forces. And then down here, Sikhism. Has anyone ever seen a Sikh? Yay! You can identify as
You have to seek out.
You must seek very long to find out.
Hey, I will say if you ever go to Niagara Falls, they own they're buying up a lot of Niagara Falls.
Yeah?
Sikhs, a lot of Sikhs.
Yeah. And you can tell us a Sikh is very interesting. Sikhism is very interesting. It's basically like Hindu Islam. So one God, so rather than whereas Hinduism is many gods, Sikhism is there's one God, and it's in a sense the God of Islam, in a sense. But it has ideas like karma, reincarnation, all these type of things, but one God. And there's a sense that the God has a grace. There's a sense that so there'll be Sikh phrase would be like we are born due to karma but saved due to grace. It's a blend of things here, and there's very much of a sense of there's almost a sense of monotheism and pantheism going on here. Like I am God, but God something different all at the same time. Whereas this is like there's a God and a devil that are fighting it out. So there's a way in which these things belong here as opposite poles. That's my theory anyway. So there's these different. I'm just kind of explaining what these things are, and I'll explain how it ties into other things in a little bit. Does that make sense so far?
Yes.
And so then we get out to so we have that we're kind of moving away from the fullness of the truth, and then we end up with and most of this I'm comfortable with most of it. I had some of the things I fudged a little bit because I was I'm not exactly sure what should go in those boxes, but when you get out here, you get to the third tier of the religions where you're getting into things that are more disordered. You're right here, you're integrating the personality and unifying God right in the right way. And then out here, you're getting funky ways of doing this. So, for example, in Hinduism, you get very much a sense that rather than, you get a sense of a division between, this is what I spent most of my, this type of stuff is what I spent most of my life doing, where you're thinking, I am the awareness, I'm not the emotions, I'm not my thoughts even. So a lot of these meditations are just you literally sit there and watch your thoughts go by so that you realize you aren't even you. You may see this in the movie Bagger Vance, which is a play on the Hindu text, the Bhagavad Gita. So if you ever want to see the Bhagavad Gita without really reading the Bhagavad Gita.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's why it's the legend of Bagger Vance. It's Bhagavan, Hindu, the Lord, the celestial
got
one.
me.
Yeah, so and that's why it's Juna instead of Arjuna.
I haven't seen it in a while.
Yeah, so
90s movie.
yeah, so it's so he says what is Juna's problem? He still thinks he's Juna. That's Bagger Vance's line. So that's the Hindu thing. Your problem is that you think you're you. The problem is you think you're you. So that's
get you.
that's how they get you. But there's some redeeming qualities. For real? But basically, Hinduism it's about splitting the self in two. It's like I'm the witness, I'm the awareness, I'm the true self. I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my feelings. It's a false method of integrating the person. And so what happens when you do that, for example, if I am just watching my thoughts go by, I'm not using any of my faculties. What happens is because I'm doing everything upside down and backwards, I'm splitting myself up, which is an act of pride. That's why we talked about today, it's like perfectionism, childhood patterns. I'm very perfectionistic. Why did I like this? Because I wanted to be perfect. I wanted to be silence. I want to be one with everything. I want to not be me and not have any faults. So I just want to be the silence. So what does the devil do? He says, great, you want to be one with God. Good. Same problem as the Garden of Eden. And so the devil will help you. He will help you along on that journey. And what happens is basically when you're silencing your mind out, when you're doing that split between your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, you're trying to just silence out, you get the assistance of the evil spirits, not the Holy Spirit, because you're not integrating your personality. You're not doing integrity, you're doing division, you're not really doing unity, and you're getting a counterfeit thing. Something you have to have something come into you. That's why in yoga they talk about the kundalini, the demon serpent power comes into you, helps you become God. Bad idea. So literally, same idea as the beginning. So you have Hinduism there that does stuff like that. And you get other permutations of this. Like you get like Jainism is very much like a part of Hinduism, but it's much more about like not stepping on bugs. That's a big thing. They have like masks before masks were cool. They had they were doing that before everybody. And they have like a brush. Yeah, they have like a brush. Like so when the Jains, like I was very much into this. Like I mean I liked this stuff because I was obsessive. So like they would do things like where they sleep, like you'll see them, they turn over, they have a brush, they've gotten the thing down, like even in their sleep, they brush to move microorganisms away. It's very much a religion of nonviolence to all things, and the goal in Jainism, like so for example in a Jain village, the guy makes money by going around with a bed full of bed bugs, and he says feed them, like to get good karma, and people will jump in to get merit for feeding the bed bugs. Or the goal, the prayer is give me death in meditation. So they want to restrict eating, go off in the forest and die.
Are you vegetarians?
Yeah. Well, they're not even supposed to eat. Like the goal is to die. Like that's literally the goal. Like the goal is to die. Because the whole thing is that by living you're killing other things. So you want to because everything is God, everything is an eternal soul, everything is
so
holy.
the things that God gave you as a gift,
terrible.
you're kind of almost looking a gift horse in the mouth, so to speak.
Yes. It's why
Like,
we're not
that's-
Jain.
Yeah.
But
Interesting. I
Buddhism,
never knew that.
I do have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Because I know about Jainism to some extent. So they want to die because they want to be nonviolent toward
Yeah.
it. Is that it?
Yeah.
I just don't know. I'm curious if you know, how do they justify then killing themselves?
It's hard. I would think that the way they think about it would probably be that because it probably is. This probably is how if I was a Jain, here's what I would say. I don't know how they would say it. I would probably think about it but I have realized that I'm an eternal being, and so I've realized that I'm not my body, so therefore it's time for me to get off the wheel. So it's time for me to quit because the game's over. Okay, so it's not like I'm attached to it. So it also probably it's like, I'm not suffering. Because really I'm suffering because I'm killing these other beings that are eternal, and they don't realize that they should also be infinitely compassionate. So that's probably how, if I was a Jain, I would say it. But I don't know exactly how they would. Buddhism is definitely where I spent most of my time. But Buddhism is basically the idea that there's nothing. No you. Buddhism has karma, reincarnation. And the problem with Buddhism is very similar to Hinduism. The difference between the problem that this makes your brain not work the right way is that in Buddhism, you're again just using attention, but it's not that you think you're a true self. They may use this language in modern popular presentations of Buddhism, but in Buddhism, there's the act of observing and there's nobody home. You aren't the witness. You're supposed to be watching yourself, but you're not. There's nobody. It's just an illusion that there's anybody. So it's kind of this sense of deconstructing the identity. And the goal of this is obviously to get rid of suffering, because you don't want those passions, which we all have. We all have anger and desire and all these things. And Buddhism wants to extinguish these passions. That's the goal of Buddhism. And nirvana is the extinguishing of all passion, the seeds of... So for example, a Buddhist would watch their thoughts, get in touch with their feelings. They might observe their childhood conditioning, their desires, their anger. They'll notice it arising. They'll get you these meditations that they'll do, which is not what we're going to show in the next session how to do Catholic meditation instead. They'll just observe the feeling arise. They'll watch it. Their primary skill is attention, and they'll just notice it and observe it until they basically see through it. And if you think this wouldn't work, it actually does work in some ways. So, for example, if you're nervous, in a way you just pay attention to your nervousness, and that'll kind of loosen it up. But the way that it ends up being taken to an extreme in Buddhism, where it's not just getting in touch with it, it's getting in touch with it so much that you're watching it, and it eventually just seems like it's not there anymore. Like you see through it because you're so staring at it, but it's cutting you apart. Really, it's disintegrating your whole identity. It's mentally unhealthy, even though you end up seeming better off at the end. 'Cause you're like, the engine isn't making any noise. The engine is gone. That's why it's making no noise. So that's the problem here. And Taoism is kind of similar. Taoism is a sense, Buddhism is kind of like there's nothing. Hinduism, everything is God. Buddhism is kind of like there's nothing, or they call it emptiness. That sounds like fun. Don't do that. Taoism is more of a polarity. So like Tai Chi. Tai Chi is like the polarity between action and inaction. Like God is a. You've all seen the yin yang symbol. The ultimate is viewed as a polarity between the yin and the yang. It's not so much that it's God. It's not so much that it's and again, so their meditation would be to be in a state of active inaction, in the flow. So they would do the Tai Chi, they kind of flow along, they get into like a rhythm where it's like they're observing themselves do something, where it's like observation and action go together. So they're in like a flow, and that's kind of how they are trying to integrate the personality with the ultimate, and that's what they're doing. And I just put these things like this, so it's just like popular, like Shinto of Japan is like folk religion, old school like paganism, like Egypt, Rome. Importantly, I would also put here like things that like every culture is like, or most tribal cultures have almost the same religion. They always have a witch doctor, a shaman, a thing like that. It's just like the way it is. People naturally end up in touch with spiritual forces, and usually, I would say most of the time, you're going to get not so good spiritual forces. There may be some ways in which there are redeeming elements there. But it's a very complicated question. But mostly shamanism is getting in touch with spirits. So this is also a very popular thing. A lot of people do this. There are CDs today. Everybody and their brother wants to be a shaman. You just listen to. Basically, what it is you go into a trance using a
Ouija board.
No, using a device. So for example, drum is the main thing. Trance is generated by drums in this type of thing, or in traditional cultures also drugs. So you'll take something called peyote down in the Amazon. They'll do something that's called Little Death or ayahuasca. I wonder what that does. So it's basically it basically gives you like a near-death experience because it's so toxic. But this is definitely like if someone is in touch with spiritual forces, they'll use essentially what I would consider demonic forces. They'll have helping spirits. It's not hard. People can get into this, and you then have these things, and they're hanging around. Which it's like you don't see them floating around, but not cast for the friendly ghost. But people go into trances. They build relationships with these entities, that they talk to in a trance state. They try to they'll do almost like psychic surgery or retrieve pieces of souls. If I was treating you as a shaman, I would go with my little rattle or whatever. I'd fall on the ground. I'd go dream myself into a world, literally find something in this trance state that's a part of your soul that you lost in your life and bring it back and breathe it into you. And the thing is that this type of stuff actually, and these are spiritual forces happening, so it might actually, help you in some way.
Placebo.
Yeah, but it may actually be that the demons, maybe the demons stop bothering you in that area, or maybe they send it in. Now you're like, oh, this is great, and then you get into being a shaman person. It's like they have ways of doing that. So a lot of the thing here is that this whole outer tier is kind of in various ways. I just put Satanism up here because that would be explicitly doing what these things are implicitly doing. So the thing is that. You also have to realize, even when you see things when I was back being a Hindu, I never really realized how scary the images were. Things with snake halos, Shiva's got a pitchfork. It's this is dangerous looking stuff if you really have your eyes open. But if you don't realize that I'm literally looking at scary pictures. Like Kali, I had a picture of Kali on my wall. Imagine this, like a necklace of heads. Why a horrible looking thing with the hair down, with a huge tongue. Why would I want that on my wall? If you're thinking that if I was going to draw a demon, that's what it would be. That's what it is. This is. These things basically turn off the normal functioning of the human personality, split you in two so that something else comes in and heals you the wrong way. And that's what these forms of prayer and these other traditions do.
We got 2 minutes.
Okay, so that's basically what I wanted to cover
Paul,
today.
don't erase it.
But the basic thing that I'll finish with this is that essentially in this diagram, there are 3 ways that all knowledge, all religions try to come together. And the real way that you're going to get knowledge, religions, everything together in the proper way is, you have like where I spent most of my life, which was in the New Age movement. That's the main way in which you kind of like, when you're in the New Age movement, you use stuff like you'll do Tai Chi from here, you'll do yoga from here. You'll be like, hey, I shouldn't kill things from here. You'll be like, oh, Buddhism is cool, let's do that. And then it's like, hey, let's get a CD and let's beat this Native American drum. Like, you'll do all this stuff. I mean, you probably won't explicitly go towards Satanism, but you might be like into earth stuff and like Japanese culture or whatever. The premise is that the New Age brings everything together according to the complete splitting of the human person and unity, essentially with forces that are created spirits, demons, that are not in alignment with real integration, real unity with God. When you're getting closer in here, these things aren't as popular. It's like you're not going to find, you're not going to find that many Zoroastrians who are like, hey, doing stuff like that. What's going to happen when you are trying to bring religions together in a kind of generic way, you're going to get things which we talk about in the Catholic tradition sometimes. Certain circles will talk about Freemasonry, but the main thing going on here is the idea that all religions are equal. Let's all just get along. Let's have liberty, equality, fraternity. Let's all have human charity. So instead of divine charity, divine love, you have, hey, let's all just get along. Let's have fraternity. Instead of let me follow God's commands and let me have the liberty of freedom of sin, it's like, hey, let's do what we want. Let's have that kind of liberty. Instead of what's the other one? Equality. Instead of maybe realizing that I'm a sinner before God, I say, hey, at least I'm equal to you. It's like so. It's like there's a way in which there's a counterfeit going on, and that's how you kind of bring religion to the table in kind of a moderate way. It's not as wacky as the New Age, where it's like explicitly like we're going to make a New Age in which all people are one with God, and all the religions will join in this thing of being like Buddhist people, and they'll all be great. Freemasons like really, all right, let's all get along just kind of by getting along, and kind of in a more rational way. It's not as spiritualized in that secular type thing. Then you have the other way of looking at this is the real way of doing this, which is the Catholic Church, is the other actual principle of unity, where you can kind of have that, where that gets done properly, where you can actually have all peoples come together. You have the Jews and the Gentiles. You have one community that really works out. So that's kind of the whole thing here. That really is setting the stage for the sense of like, okay, here are the options. Like, these are the ways that you can integrate the human personality. Each one of these proposes a method of prayer. They propose ways of dealing with the human personality. And basically what happens is as you get further away, you get more distorted. As you get closer to the middle, you get the right thing. And so the next session will be looking into how to actually put into practice the stuff that's from the thing. And what I'll cover in that will be looking at the spectrum, like just like the spectrum of religions, we're going to look at the spectrum of denominations. And we'll also look at like a spectrum of prayer styles associated with denominations. So we'll see like how does prayer look different when I am a Swedenborgian? It's like, how does prayer look different when I'm a New Thought Christian or like a Christian Scientist, versus when I'm a Catholic. So that's the type of thing we'll look at, and that'll be the preparation for finally saying, okay, well, how do we pray? And then we'll get a bunch of steps, and we'll go, here's how it looks. And it'll show how the Catholic tradition will do, is that song that woman says, anything you can do, I can do better. I can do everything better than you. That's what, that's the church sings that song to all these other things. Like, because really these things can't do. There is human good in all these traditions. There are good people in all these traditions trying to do good. They can't do what they want to do. Buddhists can't be aware of themselves properly until they have faith in God, because they can't see themselves right. So basically what happens is everybody wins when everybody becomes Catholic. And these things become the human things they want to be and get free from the satanic things that are attached to them if they bring their cultural elements into our heritage. And everybody wins. God wins, we win, they win, when we shed stuff that doesn't work and it gets reworked. And that's what we're going to look at, how to pray properly and how it does best of all worlds when we know how it all fits together. So, yeah, that's that. Let me turn off my recording. So I think the recording died anyway. So